Let me start with the Epstein thing, John. This does seem to be a thing that Donald Trump cannot escape. The stink of Epstein is all over him. He knows it, and MAGA Nation knows it. He's lost some supporters, some high profile supporters like the Joe Rogans of the world. I'm curious as to how you think this might game out because it feels as though he can't quite outrun this.
Mark, I listened this morning on CNN. By the way, Fox did not cover it. I listened on CNN to the entire broadcast, the survivors, the attorneys. And then I heard Donald Trump speaking clearly and precisely, calling it a Democrat hoax. And I want everyone to understand something. I have severe disagreements with Donald Trump on a whole host of issues. But when a statement like that is made by the President of the United States from the Oval Office, it's enough. Donald Trump should be gone. He should not be allowed to desecrate the White House. And I really believe that with all my heart and soul. And when Judge Breyer yesterday gave his opinion describing Trump as trying to create a national police force, and when I know now that there are litmus tests of loyalty attached to every level of what Donald Trump does, it makes Richard Nixon look like a saint. And so I want everybody to understand, if this were a Democrat speaking from the White House, a Democratic president, the Republicans would be calling all hell down on that White House. The deafening silence from the Republican Party relative to Donald Trump is a national shame. Actually, let me correct myself. It is a Republican shame. I hope that all the documents are released. Mark, I listened for an hour and a half, whatever it was, on CNN before I had a gig this morning. And I must tell you, I was in tears. I ran a program, Mark. I was in charge of all of secondary Jewish education in Los Angeles. And I ran 3 weekend units, 100 kids each, so over 300 kids, plus junior counselors. They were 14, 15, 16, and I had an ironclad rule that if any counselor laid a hand on a student, they were gone. And I would have called the families of those kids in order to try to explain the errors that were made in hiring such a staff person. The fact that Donald Trump is still defending Epstein, still saying he was a pretty good guy, the fact that there is still this kind of cloud hanging over the White House, it ought to be removed immediately. One other quick point. I'm told now that J.D. Vance is going to get involved, that J.D. Vance is going to be in charge of containing the damage, so to speak. And I think it is a terrible decision by the President of the United States to implicate the man who could well be his successor in this scandal. The idea of a cover-up is clear, and we need to be aware and directly confront the fact that we have the most corrupt president and administration in American history. It makes the Harding scandals or the Grant scandals fade by comparison. And when you have an order given by a president that says that even hiring people for NOAA, for the weather, that they have to pass a loyalty test on his general policies, believe me, I am beyond words upset. And I want to compliment you, Mark, on your monologue this morning, which I think explained the Epstein case beautifully. And so that's my reaction. I think this is a colossal problem for America, and I don't think it's going to go away. And for Donald Trump to call it a Democrat hoax is the most absurd thing that any American president could ever say.
You know, it's interesting. While the victims were speaking, there was a flyover in Washington. There was a flyover.
There was. They had to pause. They had to pause.
And so you can take that 2 ways. One is, they just had to pause. It was a coincidence. There was a flyover. The White House is saying it was because of the Polish leader who's there meeting with Trump. which is an odd thing. I mean, is there a flyover every time there's a world leader meeting with Trump? It seems to be now there is. But the timing, I would say, looks deliberate. You know, you could, and I think that you can make a pretty good case for the fact that there are a lot of assertions of brute force here. This is what these victims have dealt with all their lives. They've dealt with very powerful men, moneyed aristocracy, as they go into these homes and these domiciles around the world and this island, et cetera. There are pictures of all of these, leaders, heads of state, powerful people, famous people.
Including Bill Clinton.
Yes. And there's a thought, it's an implicit thought, which is, if I step out and I complain about this, if I go to anyone about this, who do I go to? I mean, the most powerful people in the world are part of this cabal. And you don't have to think it through in any kind of serious 3D chess to know you could really be threatened here. I mean,
you know what I learned this morning?
So last point. So I find the flyover kind of in that category of intimidation.
Yeah.
So
let me tell you, I found out this morning that Epstein had a picture of Donald Trump on his desk. We know they were close friends. We know that Donald Trump has made comments that frankly are less than agreeable when it comes to women. I don't understand why there is a reluctance by the American people to demand real answers from Donald J. Trump. And when I heard him this morning in his press conference in the Oval Office, dismissing all the Epstein stuff as a hoax and saying there were far more important things, he's had the most successful presidency so far in American history in the opening days, it's nonsense, pure nonsense. And I guess my frustration now is, and you pointed it out, that we have an Attorney General of the United States who is giving Donald Trump license. And this is wrong. So my answer to you is, as committed as I am to opposing most of Donald Trump's policies, his conduct in relation to the Epstein case, his words today should be an impeachable offense. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. And I hope that when the midterm elections take place, the American people respond by electing Democrats, or at least, if they're going to vote for Republicans who will vote on this resolution affirmatively. We will see the White House is now threatening retribution against Republicans who vote for this resolution. If that is in fact true in terms of their conduct, let me assure you, in my judgment, Donald Trump should be disqualified and his administration should be damned by history for these kinds of actions. And by the way, if you think I'm being extreme, Mark, as I say, I ran a program for 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, that age group. We were so protective of the girls, and that's what they were, young women, but girls. And all I can tell you is the absurd comments by Donald Trump are just so disqualifying to me on every single level. I find them offensive, and I'm going to be very interested today. I had to go up to the university because I'm teaching there, and I had to take a brief break. In fact, I left what was supposed to be another session to be with you today. I want to know how the reaction will unfold during this day. I want to know what Speaker Johnson will say. I want to know how that vote is going to go. I'm waiting for members of the United States Senate to chime in on this. But most important of all, I will be watching the White House and the comments that they continue to make. And by the White House, I mean the President of the United States, which are obscene. And if I were on KGO with you right now, and somebody asked me, would you make a statement like that on the public airwaves? The answer is I would, gladly. And I believe it to be true.
I want to pivot from Epstein to the discussion of moving troops into American cities. I, by the way, don't view any of these things and statements about moving troops into American cities as distinct completely from Epstein, because I believe that Donald Trump wants to try to outrun this story,
It's
distract, or in other ways kill the clock on it. He did it for August. He had a good August because Congress wasn't in session. But as we noted on this show, Congress is back. And when Congress gets back, Epstein is going to float to the top again. And that's where we are. But what about putting American troops in American cities? Now,
Did you read, excuse me, did you read Charles Breyer's decision on this yesterday? Judge Breyer made a clear statement that it is clear from the evidence that Donald Trump is trying to create a national police force under his direction. And I must tell you, I've known Charles Breyer over many years. I've known his family. And I must tell you, I have never been prouder of a statement made by a judge than I was the statement made in his decision yesterday by Charles Breyer.
So give us a sense of what that decision, in essence, is saying.
That because
it sets the table for future decisions in relation to Trump's
Not necessarily. And the reason is because Donald Trump's people are immediately moving to overturn what Charles Breyer said. If it's overturned, it's over. But the implication is clear. Donald Trump is exceeding his authority as president of the United States. And that is a statement now made by Judge Breyer clearly. Donald Trump's people will move immediately to have it overturned. Now, let me ask all of our listeners a question. Do you have faith in the courts? And this, to me, is something of paramount importance. On the first Monday in October, the Supreme Court will reconvene. Many of the cases that are coming before the Supreme Court are cases involving excessive use of power, the attempt at use of power by Donald Trump. The test is not only what the Congress does in the next few weeks, it is what the court will do. And may I say that I hope that Judge Breyer's view is upheld. And if I were nominating somebody today for the John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award, it would be Judge Charles Breyer. He deserves it. And let me tell you, it's not easy when you make a judgment like that. But 3 cheers for Judge Breyer, who I would hasten to point out was on the Watergate prosecution staff. He's had a long and distinguished history and knows the ins and outs of Washington. His brother, of course, is Stephen Breyer, the retired justice of the United States Supreme Court.
It's you talk about the courts, and it's kind of on full display, John, that we can't really count on the courts in some ways, and yet oftentimes the courts do turn back the Trump agenda. We've seen it with the deportations. The problem is that these court cases linger, these court judgments are appealed, and just as we're seeing with the tariffs, for example, tariffs are ruled. We knew that they were illegal. We knew it. We talked about it on this show.
We sure did.
You can't just declare an emergency and start seizing power to.
We talked about Smoot-Hawley. We talked about the Smoot-Hawley bill in 1930. And some of you will recall that when we were on KGO, we did a lot of discussion about the implications. The fact that the Republicans in Congress have abdicated the responsibility assigned to them to be the ones to handle tariffs is a shame the Republican Party should carry with it for generations to come.
So my point simply is that these tariffs are continuing to be imposed. These are import taxes that were imposed by the chief executive, again, in a violation of law. And the violation of law was called out by the court, but because it's on appeal, these import taxes continue to be imposed. So just as an aside, if the Supreme Court rules, his concierge Supreme Court, Trump is counting on ruling with him, with his instincts and impulse to impose these tariffs in this chaotic, bizarre way. But if the Supreme Court rules against him, he will have to unwind these tariffs, and they're going to be hugely expensive, complex, essentially clawing back. There's going to be an expensive clawing back of all that money. There'll be lawsuits from it. John, people have lost businesses as a result of this. Small business has gone under in many cases because of these tariffs.
You're right. But don't confuse Donald Trump and his administration with the facts. They are determined to move forward on this catastrophic course. And all I can tell you is that the Republicans in Congress are as responsible for this as is Donald Trump. They have not exercised legitimate congressional authority
Oh,
over tariffs.
100%, you're right about that. I mean, that was the problem. They didn't offer any impediment in the least to Donald Trump's worst instincts. And then when they saw the tariffs, I mean, my God, how could you possibly be okay with it? I mean, 46% tariffs on stuff coming out of Vietnam. They were just these ridiculously, there's a 50% tariff on Brazil because I'm angry about the way you're treating Bolsonaro, a 50% tariff on India, driving India closer to China.
Look what happened. India was standing directly with China, Russia, and North Korea in this alliance, which formalized yesterday on the celebration by the Chinese of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II.
We talked about it on the show. Ben and I said this is only going to drive India closer to China. There you go. They're all standing there and looking at this from the review stand.
Do you understand,
watching this military parade?
Do you understand how dangerous this is? Do the American people understand how dangerous this is? I am telling you, the danger is real. Red lights should be flashing. And our political system is now being tested as to how we will respond. That includes the courts.
This is interesting to me. Let's stop talking in generalities. When you say, "Do you understand how dangerous this is?" Put some specifics on it, because I think there are specifics that are alarming.
Number one, if the president of the United States has the power to put American federal troops into cities around America, it is a threat to American democracy, including the potential and ramifications for future elections. Number two, Donald Trump has issued an executive order. There are two parts to it. One, that you need a voter ID in order to vote. And number two, to ban, listen to me carefully, to ban early voting. This is a direct threat to American democracy. It received hardly any attention, but it deserves to be underlined. In international affairs, we have now created a situation where we have an alliance of nations. You remember George Bush's axis of evil? This is an axis of evil, and it creates major problems. A military parade, and let me remind you, Donald Trump just had a military parade in Washington, D.C., the same sort of thing which these authoritarian dictators applaud so rapidly and so continually. Look, Mark.
What about this from Myra? They're going to go after Taiwan next. They're talking about China, while Donald is busy with the Epstein stuff.
It's not impossible. I think the Chinese are looking very carefully. They're building alliances. They are making major economic moves around the world. And there is no doubt that China sees itself as the future. And make no mistake, the people on Taiwan know it. They've held military exercises. What should they do if the Chinese were to invade? And we know the Chinese forces are being prepared for just that purpose. And what would the United States do? I mean, really and truly, we can give the Taiwanese what they need militarily, but they are not equipped to stand against the Chinese army.
Well, let's just talk about the economics of the Taiwan situation for a moment, because
disaster.
I think the biggest chip maker in the
correct.
world is right there in Taiwan.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just a territory, a piece of real estate. There's something significant there. I want to pivot to Gaza and what's happening there. There's hundreds of thousands of people protesting in Israel against Israeli policy toward Gaza and what's happening there. Can you try to sort that out for us a little bit? You know so much about that region.
Well, first of all, I want you to know that a group of historians declared what's happening in Gaza a genocide. But if you dig deeper, you find out there was never a discussion about it. Most of the people who were eligible to vote did not vote because they didn't know that the vote was taking place. The simple fact is, in Israel, there are two movements. One against Netanyahu.
Let me just stop for a second. The people who were eligible to vote on whether or not it was a genocide? What do you mean?
That's correct. There's a group who are genocide scholars.
Okay.
Just Google it. It's right there.
Okay.
They did not give enough notice. There was no thorough discussion about it. And
so you're saying the declaration of it as a genocide, you're saying, was not done legitimately?
Of course.
Okay.
And it's very clear. I mean, it's if you know where to look, it's all over the media, and there's no denial on the part of this particular group of people. They wanted a declaration, and they got it. Had there been a thorough debate, they might have gotten it as well. But that's not the way they operated. And as you know, this is a serious question. In Israel, there are two forces at work. One, the people who just want Netanyahu out. And that is, I believe, at least half the country. The other group is concerned about the hostages. They want the remaining hostages and the bodies of the remaining hostages released. The one thing I can tell you about Israel, whatever you like or dislike in their policy, every aspect of this is debated publicly in the Israeli press. There is no censorship. There is no walking away from it. Netanyahu today is not particularly popular on that level, but to his everlasting credit, I guess, in history, how he handled the Houthis. They just wiped out the whole leadership of the Houthis. How he handled Hezbollah, completely destroying Hezbollah. His response to Hamas. From Israel's point of view, you've got to separate the policies that are being expressed and the protests that are happening from the simple fact that from Israel's point of view, the Netanyahu policy has made them safer militarily. And I want everybody to understand that. The rockets are no longer raining down. And may I say, to Donald Trump's credit, whatever his motivation, he latched on to what was happening. And although he did not destroy the nuclear capability of Iran, he did set it back with great damage.
But they're a pariah state, John. I mean, quickly, Israel's becoming a pariah state because of what's going on in Gaza.
I hate to tell you this, but Israel's been a pariah state for years.
Okay, that I think that's the default position. Is like, hey, we're already a pariah state.
That's exactly
the world
their
is
position.
ganging up on us, so we have to take care of number one.
The feeling is that no matter what Israel does, they gave back Gaza back in 2005 to the Palestinians. And there were many, including myself, who supported Sharon's decision, with a caveat that the Palestinians then had to prove their willingness to get along. You still have not had a declaration from Hamas saying that they support a peace process. A ceasefire does not bring peace. And indeed, Hamas says they're preparing for another operation. So it's a big question. By the way, the Israelis are not blameless in all of this. There is no happiness about what's happening in Gaza in Israel.
Well, we're out of time here, but I want to. But what is happening? I mean, isn't it a genocide? Aren't there genocidal aspects to what's going on in Gaza?
No, a genocide is when you say we are taking this group of people and we are going to exterminate them, as the Germans did to the Jews and the Gypsies and homosexuals during the Second World War.
You're saying when you identify an ethnicity or a cultural lifestyle, then
and you say you're going to wipe it off the map.
Okay.
Let me promise you one thing. If Israel wanted to destroy the Palestinians, they could have done it easily. They have the weaponry to do it. They have the manpower to do it. But I must tell you, the Israeli army is driven by ethics, and Israel is driven by ethics. And although in a war, ethics may be stretched, let me be crystal clear. If you ask Hamas, they are saying, we will destroy Israel. They're out to kill Jews around the world. All you have to do is go to a synagogue in Melbourne, Australia, to see the mass destruction there. But I must tell you, no one is happy with this situation. And as you may know, may I be critical now of Donald Trump and the administration. Mahmoud Abbas, who is 86 years old and is not particularly effective as the leader of the Palestinian Authority, has been banned from coming to the United Nations. What a mistake. I would want the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, at the UN in order to let them stand and condemn Hamas. Let them stand and say, let the hostages go. One of the problems is with the Palestinians is there's no interlocutor. There's no willingness on the part of Palestinian leadership to make those kinds of statements. And that, may I tell you, is the paradox for the Israelis. With whom do they make a deal?
Yeah, there isn't a political leadership that they can really latch on to. That's probably one of the huge issues that the Palestinians have had historically. There have been competing political factions. Hamas really, was voted in as the political superstructure of Gaza for so long. I got to wrap up. This is a definite to be
Are you
continued.
telling me that you are going to wrap this up and that my time is up?
I am telling you,
Can you let him finish, sir?
No, I cannot let him finish. I've got to move along.
He's got to move along, and ladies and gentlemen, I will be listening as
you.
he moves on. May I urge, in closing, support for the Mark Thompson program. Mark does a great job. Kim does an outstanding job, and they deserve our support. And may I say, Mark, I am delighted to be among those who tells people to listen to your podcast.
I appreciate your frankness. Thank you for the love at the end here. And you can find John, of course, with a daily podcast of his own called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. Welcome back, sir. Great seeing you.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.